So we finished chapter 4 in Woke Church, and chapter 4 is about history. And this is a common thing in these conversations. The claim is that white Christians in general, and maybe not just white Christians, although that's often the implication, but Christians don't understand the racist history of the church in America. And I don't typically buy that argument. I think that especially the stuff that Dr. Eric Mason goes into in this book is all pretty basic. I think a lot of people do understand that the church participated in slavery and had a lot of questionable beliefs, and were very sort of passive in some ways in the civil rights era and things like that. I don't think that's hidden. I don't think that that's unknown. I think that most people that engage in this conversation do know about that. And the way that this is presented, and it's often even outright said in this book, and I even write in the margin here, he'll say that the things that were going on then are going on today as well. There's a little section on the curse of Ham, and he says that the effects of it can be felt up to the present day. And that's all he says. He doesn't really explain what he means by that. And is it true that there are people that believe in the curse of Ham today? Yeah, probably. But if you explain the curse of Ham to 10 evangelicals and you ask them if they believe that, I'm willing to bet that probably 9 or 10 out of 10 would say, oh yeah, that's not biblical at all. So he doesn't say that it's like rampant or anything like that. In fact, he does say in this chapter that there has been progress made, but he'll just go and say something like that. Well, the effects are being felt today, and things like that. And he doesn't explain what he means. He kind of just leaves it up to your imagination what he means. I find that very annoying, and it's a common tactic to say, well, the church was doing this back then, and they're obviously still doing it today. I find that kind of annoying. But overall, it's not bad. I mean, if you don't know the history of the church, this is a good starting point for you. There's a lot more that could be said about what the Christian church in the United States participated in, was passive about. You can go on. And that's not to say that that's just how the church's influence has been. The church also was on the side of the abolitionists. The church also was on the side of civil rights and things like that. So we don't want to only focus on the bad. We want to also focus on the good. But anyway. So chapter 4 about history, not bad, not terrible, nothing new for me, but that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything new for a lot of you out there. It doesn't mean that we can't have another book talking about it. But anyway, what I wanted to focus on in this chapter is something that he says about black nationalist groups. And he presents black nationalist groups as a hindrance to gospel work in the inner city, which it definitely is, because we've got the Nation of Islam, obviously not a Christian group. You've got Hebrew Israelites, obviously not a Christian group. These are challenges in the inner city. He's absolutely right about that. So he doesn't present these as good organizations, to be completely fair. However, he does present them as having something good to offer black people. And let me just read this from page 90 of Woke Church. He says, growing up in D.C., I can attest to the influence of the Nation of Islam. In the middle of a broken black neighborhood, you would see freshly shaven black men wearing suits, bow ties, and promoting black dignity. I looked up to them and I wanted to be like them. In many ways, they were effective in helping blacks feel a sense of worth and dignity. They had a handshake and a greeting of peace that spoke of brotherhood, connection, and respect. One of their staples has been their commitment to developing and raising up black men. One of their senior leaders, Malcolm X, was known for his rhetorical genius and his love for his people. He argued that the Bible was being twisted to fit an agenda aimed at the continued enslavement of blacks. And so even that characterization of Malcolm X, for example, promoting black dignity, and it says that he was known for loving people. We need to look at this not from a fleshly perspective, but from a spiritual perspective, from a scriptural perspective. Did Malcolm X love people? That's the question. Did Malcolm X love people? And I think if you look at this from a biblical perspective, you would have to say that Malcolm X did not love people. Malcolm X encouraged rebellion against God. Malcolm X did this by appealing to the flesh. He appealed to your flesh. Black nationalism is a fleshly thing. It appeals to sin. It appeals to a sinful desire that you already have in you, just like white nationalism does. White nationalism appeals to the flesh. And so we can all in this conversation easily see how a white nationalist would appeal to the flesh, but for some reason we have this rosy view of black nationalism in the woke movement. Malcolm X didn't love people. I use this example a lot. I used to have some very close friends before I was a believer, and we would go out and party together. We hung out with each other. We would help each other out if you know, someone needed it. You know, if someone needed to borrow money or something like that, we'd help each other out. Things like that. And the question is, did I love those people? Did I love my friends? And I would have to say, from a scriptural perspective, no, I did not love my friends. In fact, I hated my friends. I encouraged them to have illicit sex with women. I encouraged them to drink until they were plastered and do drugs and destroy themselves. I encouraged them to rebel against God, and they encouraged me to rebel against God. In fact, we were all in it together. We were going to do as much damage as we could do together, and we were encouraging each other in that. That's not love, man. That's not love. You know, I just saw this article from Living Out. I think I saw Pulpit and Pen post this, if I'm not mistaken. But look at this is about homosexual relationships. What's wrong with a permanent, faithful, stable same-sex relationship? And you know, some would say, well, at least they get to the right place. They say it's a sin against God, but that's not enough, man. That's not enough. Look at this. Look at this sentence. It says, we'd be crazy to deny the good in permanent, stable, faithful same-sex relationships. We'd be crazy to deny the good in permanent, stable, faithful, same-sex relationships. Do you understand how nonsensical that sentence is from a biblical perspective? There is no good in encouraging others to violate you. There's no good in encouraging one another to sin against God, to rebel against God, and to injure each other. Spiritually, physically, emotionally, all of that. Same-sex relationships do that to each other. It's not loving. I know that it's tempting to say, well, look, they're so in love with each other. It's not the case. It's just not the case. From a biblical perspective, there's no way to understand this sentence. We'd be crazy to deny the good in a permanent, stable, faithful, same-sex sexual relationship. There's nothing permanent, stable, or faithful about a same-sex sexual relationship. Here's the point. Here's the point. He quotes here from Tony Evans as well. I don't read Tony Evans. I don't know much about him. I mean, from what I understand, he's a faithful Christian. I have no idea. But he says this. He says he's talking again about black nationalists. And he says, it's unfortunate that my appreciation and legitimate pride in my race was not provided to me by my study of Christian theology. Instead, it came as a result of the civil rights movement. It was not until the social revolution of that era that I, like many of my contemporaries, developed a new awareness, appreciation, and awakened self-consciousness of blackness. He's lamenting the fact that when he read the Bible and when he was taught Christianity, he didn't get a pride in his race, in his skin color. And the reality is, brothers and sisters, I mean, that's not what Christianity is all about. If you read the Bible and you understand good biblical theology, you won't come out of it with pride in your flesh, in your skin color, in your ethnicity, in your tribe. What you will come out with is an absolute gratefulness, thankfulness of the fact that you are a new nation, you're a new family in Christ. All of those other things don't really make a difference. I don't have Puerto Rican pride. I like being Puerto Rican. I like being Puerto Rican. I like, you know, the culture. I like the food. It's all awesome. The island is beautiful. I love my family. I love how we hang out. I love the things that we do together. That is so much fun. So I'm glad that God made me a Puerto Rican. I think it's advantageous to me in many ways. But a pride in my race, that's not a Christian virtue, to have a pride in your race. And I think we'd easily see this if a white person said the same thing. And he's like, well, you know, I never really had a pride in my race when I was a Christian, but then when I found white nationalism, I found to be proud of my whiteness. You would see that as what it is. It's wrong. It's twisted. It's not Christian. But here we have in the woke church that kind of thing being talked of as a positive thing. It's not a positive thing. There's nothing wrong with being happy that you're black or Puerto Rican or white. There's nothing wrong with that. But to say that, well, one of the problems with Christianity is that it doesn't develop a pride in your blackness or whiteness. Look, black nationalism, white nationalism, la raza, all that stuff appeals to the flesh. It's not something that we should be seeking to promote within Christian context. I mean, Dr. Eric Mason in this says that the sociology of the black nationalists is actually good. It's a good thing. That's not true. The sociology of the Bible is a good thing. The sociology of the Bible is a good thing. That's the moral and ethical thing that we should be promoting, not pride in your race. That's counterproductive. That's counterproductive. Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with cultivating an appreciation of your culture, of your ethnicity. That's all good. But the thing is, though, that we have to have a pride almost, or maybe even our identity in Christ has to be so much more than our identity as a black person or a Puerto Rican person that it almost looks like hatred. You know what I mean? God said, you'll hate your mother, you'll hate your son, you'll hate your father in comparison to how much you love Christ. Well, you know what I'll say? And Jesus didn't say this, but I think it easily applies. If you truly love Christ, then you'll hate your ethnicity. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. God bless.